The Great Lakes are the largest grouping of freshwater lakes on Earth by surface area and contain 21% of the planet's freshwater supply. These giants provide drinking water to 35 million people across Canada and the northern United States, and the fishing industry centered around these lakes grosses about $1 billion every year. But these sources are being threatened, not by a meteor or global war, but by tiny microscopic plants called algae. When a lake has enough of a certain nutrient that the algae needs, it grows. A lot. Creating large, floating mats of these plants called algal blooms, which are terrible for the water resources. If you live in the Great Lakes area, you're no stranger to algal blooms, with 3 of the largest in Lake Erie history occurring in the last 10 years. But aside from making water an unappetizing green color, it doesn't really seem like algal blooms actually do much, right? After all, they're just really small plants, which turn sunlight into energy. So how could they be bad for the environment? Well, it turns out that the algae itself does a little harm, but once it dies, the effects can be devastating. What does happen after algae dies? The short answer is, it gets eaten by bacteria living in the water. Plants get eaten all the time though, so why do we care? It's because there's just so much algae to be eaten, which results in a lot of bacteria growth. Some of the bacteria is harmless, it won't hurt the people who drink the water, but some of the bacteria can be dangerous. Certain strains of these microorganisms that grow off of the algae blooms are known to produce toxic chemicals that can affect the brain and liver function, which are called neurotoxins and hepatotoxins. These bacteria are normally present in drinking water, but just in small amounts. It only becomes a health concern when algal blooms provide the food source the bacteria need to grow to a more dangerous level.
However, humans aren't the only ones facing negative effects from algal blooms. Fish are too. Despite living underwater, marine animals still need oxygen to survive. Luckily, oxygen can dissolve in water, which is how fish breathe. But if the levels of dissolved oxygen in the water fall too low, the fish cannot get enough oxygen to survive and can die. The bacteria that can grow off of algal blooms also need dissolved oxygen to survive. And since there's so much bacteria, they usually drop the dissolved oxygen concentrations in the water quite drastically. When the bacteria consume so much oxygen that the fish can no longer breathe, they die off in large events called fish kills, drastically altering the marine environment.
The Great Lakes are essential for both the humans and industry centered around them, as well as the marine life dependent on them. And while algal blooms may seem just like they change lake to an ugly color, the impacts can actually be much more serious.